All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of It Is What It Is podcast. I'm your host, Cody Kelly. Look, I appreciate you. I appreciate my audience out there for staying tuned, streaming in, and connecting with me. And if you want to keep seeing amazing people like who I have on today and amazing content, you got to do two things. You got to follow me on my two favorite platforms. The first one being on Instagram at CVMK33, where all my cool workout videos and everything else is posted, and on YouTube at CV, that's Cody Vernon Kelly, CV space K. I have an amazing person who's just authored her first book. Right? Am I on it? She has really flushed out her experience and is a really transparent process. And I'm excited to get into the writings of this book. With that being said, Candies Bryant, aka Rosie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Well, look, so you've written a book. I've seen you on other shows. I should have been the first, but I get it. Your homegirl is Carrie. I get it. And you've gone through this process. Before we get into it, I always ask any author why, right? Like, because I think there's the content piece of it, and I think that has its own innate doings, and that creates its own narrative. Mm-hmm. But the why, the lead up to it, because I think that's a question that every author has to wrestle within themselves. Like, do I really want to go through this, right? Like when you're going through, or you're typing the page, words on the page, or you're speaking into some type of technology that is recording the words for you, whatever text-to-speech mechanism that is being used. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think every author comes to a point that, should I go through this? Do I really want to say this? What will people think of me if I say this? So I want to start there for you, Rosie. Why?
I had the time.
Sure.
And it was really about obedience. So the pandemic was really a segue to birthing something that God wanted me to do. I didn't really want to be an author. I fought against this. I fought against prophecies. I fought against God. I fought against people saying you can do it. I fought against all of that because I can be vulnerable, but kind of with people that I know, that I love. Sure. I'm an open book, right? But when you allow others into your world that have no idea really who you are at your core, that's a different kind of experience and journey. And it really just came down to God saying, this is what I want you to do. Sure. And me saying, okay, God, I'm gonna kick and scream, but I'm gonna do your will, because that's really what happened.
So in this kicking and screaming, in this process, I'm sure there was a point between whatever chapter that you were like, ooh, Jesus, I don't know. This might offend somebody or somebody's, right? Like, I'm having a hard time, transparent moment. I'm having a hard time finishing my book because, first of all, it's a dedication toward women of color, but it's really a dedication toward Black women, but it's not, and what I mean by this graphic is not like graphic, but it is quite telling. And it's more of a, I would call it romantic piece. That is, a lot of it's fabricated, some of it's not, but I always feel like there's many different avenues to explain inner thought, and sometimes entertainment, and I would call it classical romance if I had to put it in a category, okay. Right? But sometimes I want to release it, but I'm like, man, as an elder, what would my, bishop think? Not even subconsciously, and the reality is I should and I shouldn't care, right? So what was that? And it's not a disrespect or pointing a finger toward anybody, but it's my work, right? Mm-hmm. What was that for you? What was that internal discussion?
So part of the internal discussion was I had to first figure out, well, God, why am I so special that you would want to choose me to be a part of someone's healing.
Sure.
Because it really is ultimately about healing, right? I wrestle more with the questioning of God that, why are you choosing me? Why is this my task? Why am I having to do this? Was the biggest discussion of back and forth. But I will to speak to you writing a book. Let me encourage you, okay? Because I've experienced some very traumatizing things just throughout my life. Now that I'm on the other side,
yeah,
I said this in Carrie's interview as well. People really don't matter as much as we give them credit for. Um, they're not depositing checks in our accounts. They're not pouring into us every day. Why have we given them so much power? And who really are these people?
mm-hmm.
Like these people, they exist, but do they really exist in our world? Is really the question. Because now, I've made some tough decisions in my life, and now I'm on the other side, and I realize I'm still here. I made it.
Yeah.
The theys didn't stop me from accomplishing anything. I've still got promotions. I still got degrees. I still care for my children. I'm still doing things in church, the community. They really don't carry as much weight as we give them. Because the truth is, whether you write the book or don't write the book, people are still going to have something to say about Cody. But does that mean that what they say is who Cody is? Because most of these people that have something to say, they don't even know you.
No, they don't. And
So
I've had the same number since high school. They still don't know.
they don't know us. So
Right.
we have to begin to navigate the world beyond people.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So you talked about well, first of all, how transparent is it? So I've read I always say when it comes to people of faith, and sometimes they put out a literary work. Transparent is very sermon like. It's like very surface, and they'll talk about like I was hurt. Hurt how? Hurt by whom? How were you hurt? None of those questions are ever answered. And there's no real depth. It's a very like you could take this on a Sunday morning and be fully inclusive because you never really created a true niche, right? So how niche is this, right? Like how transparent are there like exact moments? What was that like?
So the depth of the transparency, it caused me to have a conversation with my mom to say, like, hey mom, I wrote this in this book. However, I don't want you to be offended because it's not about your story, it's about my story.
Gotcha.
And I go beyond the surface. There was a lot of life that happened to me.
Sure.
And I go there. I really express this self-reflective journey of how I've arrived where I am. And I really do answer the question of how did I let this happen? I do answer that question. In regards to transparency,
Sure.
that's normally what it takes for others to be delivered and healed and to know that they're not the only one.
Yeah.
A lot of times we do sugarcoat a lot of things that we experience. We don't want to say it because if I say it, then, oh my God, again, the people, what are they going to think? But I really decided and made up my mind that that wasn't going to stop me from sharing. Of course, there were parts of the book where I was like, okay, let me take a pause because I got to think about like, should I say this differently?
Right.
Or do I just put it out there because it is my truth? So
Right.
who can take my truth away from me? Nobody. It's my reality that I live in. So it actually is very transparent. Those thoughts that people have that they may not say, decisions that people have made that they may not have wanted to based on other factors. But I go there because I made some very tough decisions in my life.
I like that. I go there because I think there's two sides to the coin. I think we have a generation that lives for the shock value and the grittier, the rawness of it is like somehow it's this higher virtue, but then there's no healing attached to it. There's no process attached to it. It's like, okay, this is who you are. This is your truth. Now what? Right. So it's like you just left a blank page, right? And you didn't continue the story. And then there is the what I would call we don't want to deal with the truth side. We don't want to, I almost do political. We don't want to study CRT because, it exposes systemic racism, right? Like we don't want to deal with the truth of it. So let's talk about the truth. So you start off Superwoman, right? Superwoman. I've heard this phrase thrown with women, especially women in leadership, and this idea of being strong, this idea of engaging in a patriarchy, a misogynistic society, and so I have to be strong. And then when you talk about specifically Black women, I have to be stronger, right? Because now I got to fight this. I don't want anybody to think that I'm angry, so I got to take on the brunt of everything and kind of just take it all in and take this abuse. So, what does that mean now to you? What is being a strong, as you wrote, Black woman or a superwoman? What does that mean now?
So I really take my time to define what that has been for most Black women lives. Growing up, what expectations was put on us, what responsibilities we had, how different it was for males, and then how also it affected life, relationships. There's a lot of ignoring that happens when you're strong. Sure. There's a lot of not acknowledging things that happens when you're strong. There's a lot of overwhelmingness that happens when you're strong. And a lot of times we as women don't know how to find the balance to navigate that. And I really talk about how Superwoman, like we're really not superheroes, we're human. So I have to give the human side of you can't continue to be Superwoman all by yourself. You got it. I'm fine. I can handle it, because eventually the breaking comes. And I discuss how that breaking affects our lives in so many other avenues. But I also talk about where if we allow ourselves to be weak, that's not weak, if that makes sense. Yeah. There really is strength in God that when we are weak and vulnerable, that he steps in. But a lot of times we're so strong that we don't allow him to come in and give us the strength that we actually need. We keep operating in this place of autopilot where we're doing everything. And the truth is, we cannot do everything. It's too much. Yeah. So I kind of go there for us. Yeah.
I like it. I'm interested. I like it. You covered something. I thought maybe this was a typo, but then I see no, it's not. You wrote produce. What is it? Babies and no produce, right? But then a couple phrases down, you write the guilt. So yeah, produce and milk and no baby, and then you write the guilt. And one might like that's usually you don't see one situation that took another individual to create, and then all of a sudden now guilt is down the road. It's usually like if it happens, there's a guilt before that, this, and then this. You took produce and no baby, and then you wrote guilt. what was going on there?
So I guess most people know that there was twins that I gave birth to, right?
Yeah.
And they came very, very early on. When you have babies and like, you may not really know until you are a mom. Like there's certain things prior to, watching your nieces or nephews or, something like your friends, kids, something like that. But it's very different when you become a mother. There's a lot of responsibility that comes when you are just a mother, period. But then there's a difference when you're a mother of now premature sick babies. That's a whole nother world, right? Um, Most people may not, they may know, they may not know that the production of milk
Sure.
that everybody rants and raves about, this gold breast milk, like it is gold to the health of the babies.
Right.
It's not as natural as people would think.
Yeah.
It doesn't just come. There's a
Yeah.
lot of work that comes with that, and there's a lot of pressure that also comes with that. Now you have babies that kind of depend on it,
Yeah.
right? For survival, and the pressure of not having them with you, and you still have this pressure on you and this expectation. It's a whole nother level of motherhood.
Hmm.
That people who just have babies, give birth, they stay in the hospital a couple of days, they go home with the baby. That wasn't my story. And I'm learning more and more. I'm like the NICU whisperer. Like when people have premature babies, I'm
Yeah.
always like, how can I help you? Can I give you some advice? Because I know the journey. Then you have a baby to pass away.
Yeah.
Whole nother whole nother journey.
Yeah.
A lot of times people think, oh, you had more kids, or people say all kind of things that may be true or not true.
Right. Right.
But that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
When you lose a child, you learn to cope, but you never get over it. I don't care how many kids you have. The one you lost, you never get over that. So the guilt with that is, did I cause this?
Hmm.
Was what did I play a role in them coming early, or what happened? All these what ifs play in your mind, like, what if I had did this? What if I had did that? Maybe this would have been different. But you have to accept what God's will is, and that's tough.
I believe it. I
That's
believe it.
real tough.
I believe it. Thank you for sharing that and being that vulnerable. I appreciate that. Uh, as you continue in the writing, and I'm starting to see a pattern. You go from expected feeling to where you are to place. It's like it's I think the best way to say it is like uh, if I'm feeling thirsty, you go from cup of water to thirsty, like, and you're doing it on purpose. Like everybody, has trends and habits and whatnot. So as an author, you're doing this on purpose. So you wrote when you leave, but before you wrote when you leave, you put loneliness as a precursor to when you leave. And there's a lot to unpack there. What are those things that are beyond the page? What are you trying to tell women, right, or anybody, I guess, that I guess if they're in that process or going through that process, and you're trying to share your story, and they can find healing from it, from feeling like this to actually entering into the reality of this, right? What is that thing? Lonely. when did it first happen? When did you feel lonely? When does loneliness occur? I guess we'll start there. And then from loneliness, how do you get to when to leave?
Okay, so loneliness is one of those things that it's internal, right? Because you can be in a crowded room and still feel lonely,
True.
right? You can be in relationships and still be lonely. So it's something internally that you have to decide, what is this? You may have to ask yourself the tough questions of like, what's happening, um, and then you got to be okay with doing the searching. So you ask yourself the questions, but then you have to be able to do also the searching of it. And sometimes it may not come, just natural. There's the aspect of going through counseling, and you have kind of like this accountability that takes place, and there's a lot of aha moments. Like, I am totally an advocate of therapy, because there's a lot of things that you begin to say out of your mouth that you realize, like, oh my God, that was one of those self-discovery moments where you said it, and now you realize, oh wow, that was connected to this behavior, to this action, and you're able to go there. But most people may stay right there at the surface versus going there and digging deeper to where does a lot of this stuff stem from. And we all have to really be honest. A lot of things that happen in children's lives affect them as adults. And when you don't deal with a lot of things that happened, or you have those tough conversations for your own healing, you can always be in this state of loneliness, or this state of abandonment, or this state of, I don't want to go on, or whatever. It's this level of dealing with it versus ignoring it. And we know a lot of times people go throughout life, and they don't deal with a lot of things that they should have. And then you have children, and then and then these things they pass on, and it becomes a norm when they naturally shouldn't have been something that was ever designed to be normal. So the loneliness didn't really play a major role in me deciding to really do anything. That loneliness came after I left, and now I'm by myself. Like, so mommy doesn't, the kids, I get a break, now they go with dad. Um, Now I have this time where I'm by myself, and I'm not needed when I'm by myself. So now the reality is I have to deal with myself. I have to face me. And what does that actually mean when I have to face who I am in this moment at this time?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. That makes sense. So dealing with yourself, um, who, what was that like? What was it like to see the real? I don't want to say the real Rosie, but I would say the fullness and the evolved Rosie, right? Like I guess you came to a pivotal point, and you got to really understand all of you, right? What was that like to see you for the first time?
So I did quite a bit of journaling.
Sure.
Therapy played a major role. Um, and after like spending a lot of time by myself, it allowed me to decide, like, well, what do you like? What do you want in life? Where are you trying to go? Like, I began asking myself those questions, because if we don't, we can look up and life is just happening, and we're just waking up every day, and life is just happening, but we're not playing a big role. Like your life used to be playing a major role in it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when, depending on what state you're in, you will just allow life to happen for you, and anything goes, things are just happening. But for me, it took me to take some quiet time to rebuild my relationship with God, because I felt like he wasn't near. I was angry at him for a while. And it sounds crazy, but
Sure.
that was my reality. Me and God was not in a good place. So part of that healing and coming to who I am, I had to realize that I needed him, and that I wasn't really angry at him. It was more like I just didn't understand. But growing up, a lot of times we're told, you don't question God, right? But I have children and I give them permission to ask the questions.
Sure.
A lot of times when they say, well, why? When they ask a question, we just say, because I said so. Well, that breaks down communication when you did it right there. So whether it's, hey, mommy, why can't I have candy? Well, you can't have candy all the time because you do know you have teeth. And because you have teeth, I don't want you to have cavities. And then, the things that happen when you have to go to the dentist. But the inquisitive brain doesn't, like, my children asking me the why isn't derogatory. They're not being insubordinate because, or disrespectful, it's a better word, because they ask me why. But it also is a teachable moment for them to say, well, you can't eat candy all day because this is why. These are the things that will happen if you continue to eat candy. And do you really want to be in pain? When you have to get fillings and, caps on your teeth and things like that. So it's really those moments that are taught and that we learn. And it should be kind of that open relationship with God as well, that we should be able, when he speaks, to ask follow-up questions. And I've learned that a lot of times God can speak a word and we run with it. And that's not actually what he meant literally. Because sometimes we take his word literally, like, okay, you said move here. You didn't ask when,
how, where.
like right. Any of these follow-up questions. And it lands us sometimes where we're like, wait a minute, I heard from God. Yeah, but you didn't ask any questions. Well, God, okay, well, when do you want me to move? Right. How should I move? Right. Are you going, what are you going to equip me with when I move? What should I expect? We're not asking any of those questions because it's kind of been this thing where you don't question God. Whatever happens is his will, but life is happening for us. And I guess I turned to anger because I didn't understand versus asking those questions, which I had to then repent and ask on the back end. Like, okay, what should I have learned from this? Sure. And I know you took me to this place, but why? Okay, now I get it. It's all tying together now. But those questions, weren't asked in the beginning.
No, that makes sense. I think anger, healthy anger, mature anger, not just this outward, explosive, destructive rage, but is an appropriate response. It's an adult response due to disappointment, due to frustration, due to the lack of whatever growth and consistency, or the lack of consistency, and it is quite natural to question the process and the one over the process, who is the Lord, right? Because if you love me, you should at least told me this was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, gave me some forewarning. I could have planned. I didn't have to invest in this and spend the money over here. You could have gave me a heads up. Could have made a better decision. And the reality is, sometimes God silence is frustrating. And I would like to believe that he is constantly tweeting, but he's not. and it's hard to really get a true insight from God, right? And I think that's something that I think every believer struggles with is
Absolutely.
what do we do when there is no word, when there is no why? When you've cried and you fasted and you prayed and you went to the $1,000 line and whatever you do, you did it, and you're still at the same place. A very human feeling. We talk about these human feelings. You wrote, "What will the people say?" And I think that's a good caveat. That's a good pivot. What will the people say? What did the people say? What are the people saying? When this first dropped, I saw you put up the social media flyer, and I'm like, countdown. I'm like, what's going on? I was like, is Rosie moving back to Chicago? Like, I'm thinking
there
that we're all
was a ton
guessing.
of things that people had to say.
Right.
It was hilarious.
I'm thinking, I'm like, because I'm not thinking anything negative. So I'm like, oh, she about to, hit the lotto, or it could be anything. I'm not like thinking whatever. But then when the book dropped, I was like, wow. And then I was like, what will people say, right? So what? Well, first of all, how are you dealing with that? Like, because obviously, like you said, you had to have a conversation with your mother, and you say, look, Missionary Wilson, it's not anything to offend you. This is just something I've been feeling. I wanted to just, tell my truth, not as an indictment, but just as a way to provide insight.
Absolutely.
But that's one layer. We know mothers love unconditionally. Everybody don't love like that. And if this book is as transparent as you say it is, what are people saying, Rose? like what? Did you ever had a big phone like, hey, heads up, I got you on page 36. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was that?
Well, I will say this. There isn't names, or I'm not dropping
right. Not like the best man,
right?
right?
Like I'm
changing the names of people.
Yeah, I'm not dropping dimes. However, I found a unique way to share my story from my perspective, from my reality, yet it touches others' lives, but it really isn't about them. This is really about me sharing how I let things happen, how I got to where I am and where I am now. Now, of course, I'm not doing life by myself, right? So it touches others, but the focus, it really is this self-reflective journey of me and how I got there. So yeah, I did have to have, a conversation. I probably need to have another conversation with somebody else, but it really isn't a dime dropping on exposing the most person that is exposed is me. And that was the toughest thing to do, especially with people who they know of you, but they really don't know you.
And I like that. I think that's personally and professionally responsible because A, you can't get sued for libel. B, it only narrates a perspective without really bringing in other personas or acclaimed personas, right? So hats off, kudos to you. I probably would have wrote the book like Harper did in Best Man, just change the names and been like, yeah, so this is what happened, and you have to guess for yourself. I would have changed a few things, some variables so nobody can say. I'm like, look, obviously this is a fictional character. You're not 7'1", right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I would have probably went around the back door. But that's why I don't need to be just writing to be writing, because I get myself in trouble. So that's cool. What will you tell? My last question for you, and I appreciate your time. You talked about this accountability, sharing your story, really discussing hard truths, feelings, conjured feelings, and a certain rawness that is covered with grace at the end, right? if somebody comes up to you and, you know, says, I'm going through whatever, as a mother, I've lost a child, or as, you know, just there was something in this that spoke to me because I'm in this similar situation. I'm going through the same thing. What is your message to that person? What do you want to leave with that individual?
I guess the best way to give, I guess, advice. The biggest thing you get to do every day is rewrite your story. You get to be in a place today, but change your trajectory on tomorrow. And a lot of times, I mean, life is going to continue to happen for us, whether as long as we're here, life is going to happen. But it is so important how you navigate life. It matters what decisions you make. A lot of times we think that decisions that we make only affect us. It doesn't. It affects others. There's this, ripple effect sometimes that takes place when you make a decision for you, although your intentions may not be bad, right? But it does have this ripple effect where others who touch you, they're affected by it as well. So the best way is to plan. There are certain things that you're gonna have to cope with because life is happening, but it doesn't have to break you. There is a other side. If you're down now, life happens, you won't be there always. And there were times where, when you're at a low point, you think this is going to be my life forever. Like you can't see it. But then as time goes on, you're like, wow, I'm not in that place anymore. I've made it to a different place in life. And you just sometimes have to wait it out. Sometimes you may have to pray it out, talk it out. All those things may be necessary for your journey, but you have to be able to be strong enough in the strength of not just yourself, because a lot of this, you're not going to make it on your own. You're going to need people and you're going to need God, most importantly. So for you to get there, you got to first be motivated to get there. And then you got to know certain things you can't change, certain things you can, but leaning on something that's stronger than you, which is God, you could get there. And, he's not punishing us for just being here. Like he really is the person that has our best interest at heart. A lot of times we may not see it, but the truth is we can't handle. If God dropped in our laps our whole lives, we couldn't stomach that. We couldn't deal with oh my God, because we wouldn't be living life. We would be trying to change what he's already laid out. So that's a part of why, the same reason we as parents, we don't tell our kids everything that we're going to do, because then it becomes about every day you said you were going to do this and now I'm waiting on you to do it, and you've lost focus of most of your day because you're focused on the thing that I've shared with you. So I get it. I'm like, okay, God, you're connecting it. We can't handle all of these things. When my kids, I have a big surprise for them. I don't tell them until a day or two before, okay, we're going to go to Dallas. We're going to go to the resort, the water park, because they will bug me every single day. And now the focus only becomes about what I've shared with them versus other things that are taking place in life. So I feel like God kind of does that with us as his children, that he can't give us our whole plan at once. We can't handle it.
No, I wish you'd give me the next week though. I really let me know what. But no, I appreciate it, Rose. Where can they get the book? You've written this thing. It sounds amazing. I can't wait to get a hand on myself and get a copy for myself. And I pray that it's autographed, because anytime I bring anybody on the show, I should get a special copy. Where can they get the book?
So right now, so let me just thank everybody again because pre-sales, the pre-release was amazing. I'm still kind of shocked, like, oh my God, I've sold that many books just pre-release, right? Well, they can purchase the books on www.candiesrose.com. The website is there for you to purchase. Also, there will be a book launch, Chicago and Houston. So, I got two bases that are loaded. So I'll be dropping a flyer, a video, all the things to promote it real soon. But there'll be a Chicago book launch. There'll also be a Houston book launch. And of course, books will be there. Of course, soon, the Amazons and everywhere else you'll be able to purchase. But for right now, it's on the website.
That's what I'm talking about. Amazon. If you had an Audible version of it right now, that's how I get through my reading. I gotta listen to everything. Look, if y'all want to keep seeing amazing content, you got to do two things. Connect with candiesrose.com. That's where the book is being sold. It's going to roll out into the Amazon platform, into these other avenues. And if she's in Chicago or Houston or anywhere near, come see her. Come get an autograph, meet this amazing author. And if you want to keep seeing amazing influencers, authors, and leaders like herself, you got to do two things. And we said at the beginning, connect with me at CVMK33 and on YouTube when my thing pops up. I don't know what's going on. At CV Space K, where all amazing content is heard. I appreciate my guests. I appreciate my listeners. And until next time, guys, thanks.